May 31st, 2025, a date that will live forever in the story of modern football. Paris Saint-Germain, a club defined for over a decade by ambition, excess, and heartbreak, finally stood at the summit of Europe. They didn't just win the UEFA Champions League, they rewrote the ending. And the most surprising part? They did it without their biggest stars. No Neymar, no Kylian Mbappé, no Lionel Messi. For years, those names were supposed to deliver the dream. They didn't. And yet, in their absence, PSG found something stronger. They found unity. They found identity. They found belief, led not by superstars, but by great talents like Warren Zaire-Emery and Désiré Doué. And at the heart of it all stood one man, Luis Enrique, a coach who turned a luxury puzzle into a complete team, a strategist who reshaped chaos into control, a leader who made PSG more than a brand. He made them champions. Real champions. Not bought, not branded, built. So how did we get here? How did a club once mocked for buying success finally earn it the hard way? To answer that, we need to go back to the beginning. In business, we measure success by returns, by growth, by dominance, by market value. And in the business of modern football, Paris Saint-Germain just executed the most expensive campaign in the sport's history. This wasn't just about winning a trophy. This was about converting billions into global equity. For over a decade, PSG operated less like a football club and more like a state-backed brand. Qatar invested nearly $2 billion into a single objective: win the UEFA Champions League. And now they've done it. But the question remains: was this a profitable venture? Or just an elite case of soft power marketing? Because behind the goals is strategy. Behind the celebration is capital. This is the money manual, and today we break down the economics behind PSG's $2 billion journey to European domination. The year was 2011. Qatar Sports Investments acquired Paris Saint-Germain, not for profit, not for football, but for positioning. QSI, backed by the Qatari state, acquired a struggling mid-table French club with minimal global exposure. Why? Because Qatar was preparing for its World Cup, and global visibility was the goal. Owning a football club in Paris, one of the world's most iconic cities, wasn't a sports play. It was a geopolitical investment. PSG would become the flagship brand of Qatari soft power. From tourism to trade, diplomacy to media, this wasn't about matchday revenue. It was about influence acquisition. From 2011 to 2024, PSG spent more than 1.7 billion euros on player acquisitions. But this wasn't spending for performance. It was strategic branding. Neymar Jr., 222 million euros. Kylian Mbappé, 180 million euros. Lionel Messi, technically a free agent, but more than 120 million euros in wages and bonuses over 2 years. These were not just footballers. They were brand amplifiers. Every post, every highlight, every press photo expanded PSG's reach. Instagram, TikTok, merchandise, global tours. By 2023, PSG had crossed 1 billion euros in annual brand value. They became one of the top 5 most followed clubs in the world. Football was no longer the product. The brand was, but growth came at a cost. PSG routinely spent between 90 and 105% of their revenue on player wages. That is far beyond UEFA's recommended 70% ceiling. Operating losses were common. UEFA's financial fair play flagged the club multiple times. So how did they stay afloat? Sponsorship engineering. Major sponsors, Qatar Airways, Qatar National Bank, Urdu, were all state-linked. Allegedly, many contracts were overvalued to artificially boost commercial income. It allowed PSG to meet financial regulations on paper while continuing to spend big. In corporate terms, this was a related party transaction loophole. UEFA opened investigations. Fines were issued. Warnings were given. But the strategy never stopped. Because this wasn't a football club. It was a sovereign investment vehicle. In 2025, PSG finally won the UEFA Champions League. Not with their Galacticos, not with the names that sold jerseys, but with a system, a coach, and a belief in a different way. Let's assess the immediate financial impact. Prize money alone was between 85 and 100 million euros. But that was only the beginning. Sponsorship deals are expected to increase in value by up to 25%. Merchandise sales, especially kits and lifestyle apparel, are projected to exceed 1.5 million units this year. PSG's social media following has surged by over 10 million followers in just a few weeks. The club's overall valuation jumped from approximately 3.2 billion euros to potentially over 4.5 billion. That's a value increase of over 40%. But here's the key point. The return is not in annual profits. It's in long-term brand appreciation and global leverage. For Qatar, the Champions League win wasn't a sporting achievement. It was a branding milestone, a high-yield result from a long-term, high-risk investment. Let's look at this through the lens of an institutional investor. Initial capital expenditure, more than 2 billion euros over 13 years. Revenue growth, from 95 million euros in 2010 to more than 700 million euros in 2024. Brand equity multiplier, estimated at 4.5 times over 12 years. Media rights value. PSG now commands premium broadcast fees globally. As an asset class, this is not about cash flow. This is about capital appreciation and political leverage. PSG is not just a football club. It is a global branding machine for the Qatari state. It elevates the country's image. It secures soft power influence. It strengthens Qatar's geopolitical identity in the West. It sports as strategic diplomacy, and PSG is its most valuable portfolio holding. But what happens next? Is this the future of football? Can other clubs survive in a world where nation-states build sporting empires? Or will more teams find inspiration in PSG's latest chapter? A chapter not about money, but about merit. Because on May 31st, 2025, PSG reminded the world that money can build a foundation. But vision wins trophies. Discipline lifts cups, and cohesion creates dynasties. Luis Enrique turned a luxury brand into a balanced machine. He gave youth a voice. He gave Paris pride. And finally, he gave them Europe. So now we must ask ourselves, not as investors, not as analysts, but as people who grew up with the magic of the game. What is the cost of winning when the soul of the sport is sold piece by piece? Paris Saint-Germain won the Champions League. They climbed the mountain. But as the smoke clears and the lights fade, we must all decide what this victory really means. Because in football, as in business, the numbers never lie. But sometimes they don't tell the whole story either. If this story made you think differently about football and finance, subscribe to the Money Manual. We decode the global economy, one headline at a time. Drop a comment below. Was PSG's Champions League win a visionary investment? Or just a political power play dressed up as sport? Because in today's game, money doesn't just talk, it wins.